Hello and welcome to the Cretaceous Campcast. I am Cretaceous Dave, and this is a podcast all about Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous and Jurassic World Chaos Theory. Today was finally the day, San Diego Comic-Con day for Chaos Theory. There was a panel, we got a teaser trailer, a synopsis, poster, some new images, but we're not going to talk about any of that in this episode. No, I've got a special episode coming for you guys about season 2 in the next day or two. I'm going to be having a conversation with Matt from Jurassicpedia. He was at San Diego Comic-Con. He was at the Chaos Theory panel. We're going to chat all about season 2 and everything that went on at San Diego Comic-Con. But don't worry, he's not going to give any spoilers about season 2, episode 1 that he was so lucky that he got to see at San Diego Comic-Con. So, if we're not going to talk about that, what are we going to talk about in this episode? Well, it's a little complicated. This past Friday, I was supposed to have a conversation with Kia, who you may know as YutyTyrant, handles some of the social media here at the podcast, and we were going to chat about season 1, catch up on things, share our thoughts, have a conversation, and we had tons of technical difficulties. No matter what we tried, he couldn't hear anything I said. So I'm going to make the most of what we did, and I ended up chatting with him, typing up a message, and then he would answer the question. To try to get it to flow, I still asked the question as I typed and he was reading. So it kind of looks like an interview, a conversation, but we'll see how this turns out after everything gets edited. And hopefully it's not too awkward for you guys to listen to. There may be some bits of silence while he's reading what I was asking him before he answered. So if you're listening to the audio podcast, I apologize if there are moments of silence. If you're on YouTube, you know, you'll see what's going on, but we made the best of the situation and we're going to try again really soon. And one thing we tried to do with it was to go live on YouTube, but because of all the technical difficulties, we weren't able to do that. So that is something I'm looking forward to doing in the near future, is going live on YouTube for you guys, whether it be an episode, an interview, a Q&A, conversation. I have no idea. It's just something I've wanted to do. So we're going to give it another try sometime real soon. So anyway, here we go. Kia gives his thoughts on season 1 of Camp Cretaceous, season 1 of Chaos Theory. And, you know, we were going to try to have a conversation, but I did ask him some questions. So take a listen at what he had to say. The first question I asked him, since that was cut off of the recording, is his overall thoughts on season 1 of Chaos Theory.
So just to start with some overall general thoughts, basically, well, on a baseline level, I was always going to really love and enjoy this show because I enjoyed the previous one. This is a sequel, so I always expected to enjoy it. But even though I was really careful to not overhype myself, not to set expectations that were too high, the very first season, at least this last season, basically blew me away. It's like my third favorite thing in the entire franchise now, after the original movie and The Lost World. It's kind of exactly what I wanted, which is kind of odd. But, you know, after the last 2 seasons of the show and after Dominion, which, you know, these things weren't exactly universally loved. There was a lot of talk about, you know, taking things back to basics, and I can agree with the general sentiment, but I always sort of disagreed with basically how to go back to basics. What does that actually mean? Because I see people who wanted to literally take the story back, and I just didn't really like that. It felt regressive. Instead, what the show does is that it kind of takes the storytelling approach of the original trilogy, you know, goes back to basics in the storytelling, where the show is more character focused. It's a very human driven story. You know, there's not that much action outside of the very last episode. There's not that many dinosaur scenes, compared to what you might expect. So it's kind of going back to basics in that approach, but applying them in the sort of in the world that the movies have now created. So it's moving the story forward, but doing it in a old-fashioned way. And this mix is basically everything that I wanted, which is really interesting. And I really hope they can keep this style and carry it forward for however many seasons they decide to do. And I know this last thing is very cliche, and basically not everyone, but like most people have said this, but I think I should say it just once. But yeah, this show was basically at least what I wanted from Dominion. I think this is what Dominion should have been. We didn't get it then, but I guess we're getting it now. Better late than never. And whilst it's not perfect, obviously, it's not like it's not actually flawless, but I honestly think it's really, really solid. And basically it's elevated compared to the previous show on like pretty much every single category. Just in general, it's so good.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to talk. I know you can't hear me, so I'm going to send messages in the chat. Do you have a favorite episode from season 1?
That's kind of hard to say. I'm guessing it's between episode 7 and episode 5. Episode 5, basically, it has the whole... on one hand, you have the whole Dino King thing with Bobby Nublar and the Stygimolochs, and the dinosaurs in general in this show look really good. The show itself in general looks really good, but there's just something about the Stygimoloch model that just... I don't know, it looks so real. It looks like they actually used puppets. It doesn't look like a digital model. It's so impressive. And of course, once again, this whole thing with Bobby Nublar and Dino King, it's a really nice way, organic way of like exploring the aftermath of the Lockwood Manor incident, with this kind of roadside attraction where basically animals are being exploited for profit. And I feel like that's kind of the main thing of the whole franchise, is people using nature, using animals, exploiting it for their own gain, trying to get control over it. So that whole thing's really good. But of course, you also have Darius and Kenji going to confront Daniel Khan, who was a very surprising return that I did not see coming. And of course, it all ends with basically the most unexpected death in the show for me was Daniel Khan getting killed. I still can't believe that they actually did this. And because leading up to Chaos Theory, of course, for the podcast, we did the Cretaceous Countdown. So I had just seen season 5. I just seen Daniel Khan in that. So with the added context of that season and everything that Daniel Khan did, in the previous show, that ending just hits so hard, because after everything, after not caring for his son, after leaving him to die on an island full of dinosaurs, and even in this show, he still tries to manipulate him into basically running the Khan enterprise, in his behalf. After all of this, Kenji finally like gets to him. He finally like gets to his to the good side of him. He finally decides to like be a dad for his son, and then instantly gets brutally murdered by an Atrociraptor in front of his son's eyes. And that was I didn't expect that at all. It really was a completely insane moment when I first saw that. So that elevates episode 5, but then there's also episode 7, which on one hand, it's kind of being boosted by the fact that you get Kenji's like full reaction to seeing his dad get eaten alive in front of him, and like obviously in terms of just pure brutality, in terms of like what you see on screen, there have been I guess you could say better deaths in the franchise, but I don't think I've ever seen someone react in such a real, just tangible way to seeing someone get eaten. I felt so bad for him, and I actually I even like cried a little just seeing his reaction, seeing the man just completely break down, having a panic attack in the middle of the road. But also, even aside from all of this, you have the underwater sequence, because at the end of the previous episode, Ben, Yaz, and Sammy were tossed into the lake by the Beckel Spinax, and also helped by the DPW. So you have this kind of like Fallen Kingdom gyrosphere scene-esque underwater thing that's so tense, so well shot, so well realized by everyone involved. So I really can't pick one favorite episode, but it's definitely between those two, either episode 5 or episode 7.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to keep asking questions, even though I know you can't hear me, and then I'm going to send them in the chat. So how do you think the writers handled the aging up of the campers?
Yeah, totally. All of them, I think, aged up in a really believable way. I love their new personalities. I love their new designs. Obviously, because my favorite was Ben, I'm kind of biased towards him, but I just love the fact that they made him this huge, huge, tall dude who is driving around the countryside, basically living in his red van. He's just he's so much fun. All the characters are a lot of fun, but I think him especially was the standout for me, not just because he was my favorite in the previous show. I think he's genuinely really great. But even like the evolution of all the characters feels so organic. Like Darius, before the whole thing with the Allosaurus went down, he was working for the DPW, which is absolutely something that I can see him doing. Brooklyn was an investigative journalist, I think that's what they call her. An investigative journalist, which once again makes a lot of sense compared to what her character was in the previous show. Yas still struggling with PTSD, sort of acknowledging that that's not the sort of thing that goes away overnight. And obviously they tied really well with the sort of, again, the post-Fallen Kingdom world where dinosaurs are everywhere, and thus she's using that experience that she has in order to like help others who might be suffering from this, because now there's dinosaurs everywhere. Being afraid of dinosaurs is a very like real problem. Then you also have Sammy, who, first of all, it's really heartbreaking that after everything she did, because the whole reason she went to Camp Cretaceous was to spy, and she spied because she didn't want her family's farm being taken away by Cash and Manticore and that whole thing. So everything she did for her family, and now to learn that they've sort of stopped speaking to her, which I think we all know why that's for. There are people in Texas and they don't really love the fact that she has a girlfriend. After all this time, she was there for them when they needed her, but unfortunately the same thing wasn't true the other way around. But she's settled in, she's living in her own ranch. she is practicing this martial arts thing. I've forgotten what it's called, but that's really cool. And of course, I have to mention the relationship between Yasmina and Sammy. And what I really love about this is that the show kind of acknowledges that this kind of romantic relationships isn't always smooth sailing, isn't always like butterflies and rainbows. You will struggle, there will be hardships, but as long as you deal with it responsibly, you can get through them and basically come off the other side with with an even stronger bond. So the things that they were struggling with felt very real, because yes, it would be hard to maintain that sort of relationship over a long distance. So that felt very believable. Them working through their problems and coming together again was believable. The whole thing was really nicely handled. And as for the other couple, which admittedly I didn't really buy when Kenji and Brooklyn got together in the previous show, and I think the writers, the creators of they sort of realized that he wasn't a very popular couple, and so they had them break up, which in of itself is like a very sort of gutsy thing to do. I did not expect them to go that route. But not only them, but the reason why they break up, once again, it just feels very organic. It feels very believable. Someone pointed this out on Twitter. I don't remember who it was, but someone pointed out that in the scene where Kenji and Brooklyn, break up at the top of the cliff, when Kenji is like, "Oh, look at the parasaurs. You have to look at them at this specific time," and Brooklyn's like on her phone, just like, "Yep." It's very reminiscent of I don't remember the exact episode, but at the very beginning of season 5, when he has just been reunited with his father, he wants to reconnect, and he's like, "Oh, Dad, I'm gonna tell you all about these crazy adventures that we've had. All these dinosaur encounters. I want to tell you all about this." And his dad is once again just looking at the screen. Yeah, later. So it's like they made it come full circle, and it sort of made me feel so bad for Kenji, because this just keeps happening for him. The poor guy just can't seem to find someone who is willing to listen to him, and it's very heartbreaking. But once again, it makes sense. It's more mature. It's just so well handled. I can't praise it enough.
Okay, so I know you didn't think they were really going to kill Brooklyn, but do you think they did a good job of keeping the audience thinking that she was dead?
Oh, absolutely. Mainly because after they dropped the first episode, 1 week early in the sort of I forgot what it was called, but then the virtual event thing where they streamed episode 1. When I saw episode 1 and it was like less than a minute in, you hear Darius's radio, "Oh, one of them's dead," and I was like, okay. And the whole thing with the flashback where you see blood on the floor, which in of itself is a very gutsy thing for them to show blood. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is legit. Maybe they did genuinely kill off Brooklyn. Throughout the show, they did a really good job kind of through the reactions of the characters, through seeing their grief, through just the storytelling. It did genuinely make me think that, okay, this is legit. They actually killed Brooklyn off. And I was a little worried I would lose our lose our bet that we made together, but I was totally fine with being wrong if it actually meant them having the guts to kill off a character. But of course, they didn't. She's still alive. We learned that in like the very last scene of the show. But even then, like, she's lost. Basically, she's lost a hand, and even that's still like that's more of a permanent damage to a main character than I think anyone in the entire franchise. So even that's pretty ballsy. Even that's pretty mature. And I think the really important thing is that even though we as the audience, we know that Brooklyn is alive, she did survive that, the characters don't know that yet. So when you rewatch the show, their grief, the thing that they're going through still rings true, because as far as they're concerned, Brooklyn is dead. Like even going into season 2, they still think she's dead. So I think that's a nice way of letting the audience know that Brooklyn is alive, even if crippled. But you can still like get emotional story. You can get emotional storytelling and emotional scenes out of it, without necessarily sort of ruining that on subsequent rewatches.
Okay. I know I did a full episode about Mateo, but what are your thoughts? What do you think his deal is?
Not really sure. I think he's a nice guy. I don't know. It is I was fully on board with him just being a nice guy until the last episode, where he shows up at like he shows up just at the right time to save our characters, and it just feels like such a massive coincidence that there has to be something there. I don't want to I don't want to like give myself too many expectations, but it feels a little suspicious that he would show up at exactly the right place at exactly the right time, even after he told Darius and Kenji that, after he drops them at Brooklyn's apartment, he's like, okay, I'm done, bye. So it's almost as if he was done, but then he's somehow able to track them to like where that dock was, and he's somehow able to like show up at just the right time. It does feel a little suspicious. I don't think he's a bad guy, but maybe he's like I like to think that I think you said that in your episode, where he's working with Brooklyn, and that's basically Brooklyn's way of making sure that the rest of the kingdom is okay. That theory I like. But I'm not totally convinced that he's like fully evil. I don't think he's like working with the creepy Atrociraptor lady, because he saves them from the raptors multiple times. So I don't think he's working with her or with whoever is hunting the characters, but I do think there's more to him than him just being some random guy. I think if I had to choose a theory, I'd probably choose the one where he's working with Brooklyn. That's what I'm going to theorize for now.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way too. So the Nublar 5 are on a ship heading somewhere. We're not going to say where to avoid spoilers. But do you think the Handler and the Raptors are on that ship? And if not, how do you think we see them again? We're going to get more of the story, I'm sure. Reading the question.
Well, the thing is, we only see like 3 of the 4 Atrociraptors that are in Dominion. One of them is missing. Red is missing. And I think it's a very deliberate choice because on the truck there are like 4 cages. There are like 4 containers. So for all we know, Red is somewhere else, like not in the US. Maybe Red is at the same place that the cargo ship is going, and that's how you can still have at least one Atrociraptor a threat to the Nublar 5, whereas the other ones, the other 3 as well as the handler, maybe they can be a threat to Brooklyn. I don't, because I am expecting to see more of Brooklyn in like the next season. I think she's on the US mainland. She might not be, but assuming she is on the US mainland, and also like she's on the US mainland, Bumpy's on the US mainland, Matteo is still in the US. So like there's a decent number of relevant characters in the US. So you can have the remaining Atrociraptors as well as the handler being a threat to them, whereas the other characters, the other of the Nublar 5, are dealing with Red, who's maybe on some other mission to wherever the boat is going, and they sort of it ends up causing problems for our characters in like season 2 or wherever Red shows up, because I think Red will show up because there were like renders of him in like promotional, in like, I don't know, the shop display things. They had renders for Red, so I think they have the model, and if they have the model, they're gonna be using it somewhere. And my mind keeps going back to the fact that they split up the pack, and that there has to be a reason for it. So I'm thinking the idea is if you have one Atrociraptor be somewhere else, then you can keep their threat even if the story leaves the mainland United States.
Yep, I agree there. I didn't really think about Red being somewhere else, but who do you think the broker is? Do you have any thoughts or ideas about who it might be?
The broker. Well, obviously, the popular fan theory is that it's Soyona Santos, and it's not without merit, because basically that's what she was doing in Dominion. And I don't remember which one it was, but one of the crew involved with the creation of Chaos Theory, they were hosting a watch party for like the other members of the crew, and they had a bunch of toys around the desk, and one of them was a figure of Soyona Santos, and I don't think that's an accident. Between buying and selling dinosaurs being her thing, and also, of course, the Atrociraptors in Dominion, we see them with Soyona Santos. I think there's a lot of and there's also the line in Dominion where Soyona is talking to Dodgson, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't like what happened last time. Could this be last time?" There's a lot of things suggesting that it could be Soyona Santos. It could also just be some random new character. It would be I feel like it would be on brand for them to just introduce a new character and be like, well, Soyona is just one broker, but there's other people doing similar work, and here's another one we made for our story that we're telling in our own little corner of the universe. I can see them doing that as well. I want her to be Soyona Santos because I think she was a really interesting The little glimpse we got in Dominion suggests she's a really interesting character, and I want to know more about her. But once again, just like everything, I don't want to... I'm not going to say it's for sure her, because I don't want to be disappointed just in case. But it would make a lot of sense if it's Soyona Sanzo.
I agree. I think it's her, and I hope it's her. I would love more backstory. We're gonna have to wrap up because I have to get back to work. So I have one more question for you. Do you think they're gonna release the first episode to the general public after Comic-Con, or are we gonna have to wait 1 to 2 months? And do you think we can avoid spoilers that entire time? Because in 2 days, people are gonna be watching this episode, not us.
I want and hope that they release it online, but I don't know. I do hope that they release it online, but I could also see them keeping it just like an exclusive treat for people who can attend San Diego. Avoiding spoilers for like 1 or 2 months would for sure be incredibly difficult, and like they gotta know it's gotta be spoiled. If they don't release it like online officially, it will be spoiled. There is no way it doesn't get spoiled for like 1 or 2 entire months. They should know how fans work. They should know how internet works. I'm hoping they're smart about it and do release the episode online in some way. I'm also interested in because other than obviously it's not been like official, but I'm also expecting we'll get like a teaser trailer or something, and whether or not that will be released online.
Did I lose you? I think
I
I may have.
The first episode, not to sort of come to terms with it, but if they don't release the actual teaser trailer, that would be very disappointing. I'm hoping they release both, but if they show a trailer, I'm hoping they, at the very least, give us that, because, well, not everyone has the luxury of being able to attend Comic-Con.
All right, I'm going to have to end. We're going to have to jump, but I want to chat again soon, and then maybe we can do it next week after we get the trailer, and we can talk about that. What do you think?
For sure. I do really love that even though we were kind of plagued by problems, we still managed to find a way. That's really cool. I would love to do this again, whether it's next week or whenever. Hopefully we don't have audio issues next time, but this is a lot of fun regardless. yeah life sure finds a way.
Thank you. I'll edit the rest of the stuff after this.
Thank you very much for having me for a third time now. That's kind of insane, but thank you very much for having me for a third time. I love being here. I love doing these, so thank you very much.
Yeah, we're going to have to do it more often. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you so much to Kia. Again, you may know him as YutyTyrant, handles some of the social media here at the podcast. I'm really sorry to him that technically things didn't work out. I'm really sorry and apologize to you guys, the viewers and the listeners, that this may not have been the most professional episode. I was in my car. He was in his car. Technical difficulties all around. Delays in the audio, but it's all right. We had a lot of fun. I love chatting with him. This was, I think, our third time we got together to have a conversation, and hopefully we get to do it a lot more. Maybe we'll get together really soon and talk about the teaser trailer for season 2 of Chaos Theory. And in case you missed it earlier in the episode, or I'll just remind you again, I've got a special bonus episode about season 2 coming up in the next couple of days. It could be as early as late night on Monday, early morning Tuesday. I'm not sure. It depends on when we get things wrapped up and I get around to editing things. But Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Go watch the season 2 of Chaos Theory teaser trailer. It is out now on YouTube. It's plastered all over the place on social media, including our Twitter account. And I cannot wait for October 17th. Yes, it's on a Thursday this time, October 17th. Very strange if you ask me, but apparently Netflix has been doing that recently with some of their shows. Anyway, October 17th for season 2 of Chaos Theory, and look for our special season 2 episode coming up really, really soon in the next couple of days. So thank you everyone once again for watching and listening. Stay safe, stay Jurassic, and have yourselves a good one. So long.